Hi there everybody, Michael Valenti here with the School of Self-Defense in Indianapolis, and today I'm kind of making a sequel video to a video that I made last week. So last week we made a video that was explaining the differences between Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and Judo. So if you haven't seen that, check it out. Today we're going to be answering the question of which is the better system for self-defense, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu or Judo. So that's a tough question, because both the arts have a very similar arsenal. That all of them have chokes, they all have arm bars, they all have leg locks, they all have takedowns. But philosophically, as I explained earlier, which I'm not going to go over extensively again, they are different. That in Judo, you don't really want to go to the ground, and Jiu-Jitsu, you do want to go to the ground. So then you get into the argument of 90% of all fights end up on the ground. So it would make sense to become an expert at ground fighting, since inevitably the fight's going to end up down there. However, 100% of all fights start standing up, so it becomes imperative that you become excellent at stand fighting. So which is the better art, Judo or Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, for the study of self-defense? Well, I will say, one thing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu has is this great division. That, and some people disagree with this, but I personally have partaken in this division. I've seen the difference. That you have the self-defense jiu-jitsu, which is kind of the old school jiu-jitsu that Helio Gracie set up. And then you have kind of the modern take on it, which is the sports jiu-jitsu, where most of it's about accumulating points during a tournament. I will say without a shadow of a doubt that Judo is a superior self-defense art to sports jiu-jitsu. There's no doubt about it. Because if you watch someone do sports jiu-jitsu, they do crazy things that you should never do on the street. That they will throw themselves straight to their ass and play open guard and hold their hands like they're holding a chalice. And even though I trust that the players of jiu-jitsu would be smart enough not to do that in the street, the skills they're developing are not the skills that you would use for self-defense. So they get super duper good at playing an open guard, and in a self-defense scenario, an open guard will get your ass kicked. So I'm not going to compare sports jiu-jitsu and judo. I want to compare old school self-defense Brazilian jiu-jitsu, like Helio Gracie jiu-jitsu and judo. I think that the old school jiu-jitsu has something over judo in the fact that it doesn't really acknowledge weight classes, and it acknowledges being punched quite thoroughly. I went to a Royce Gracie seminar, and when I was training there, the first thing he taught us was a side kick. And I think a lot of people who study jiu-jitsu, I think there's people who are black belts in jiu-jitsu who've never thrown a side kick. And so that old school Gracie jiu-jitsu has strikes in it. Now the point of the strikes aren't necessarily to knock out your opponent, but they have punches, they have kicks, because they acknowledge that your opponent can punch and kick you. And if you watch the old fights with, like for example, Hicks and Gracie, if you watch his fights, he punched and kicked a lot. He'd get you under control and just start wailing on you, which I think is very realistic for a self-defense scenario. Is that your opponent's going to punch you, you're going to be hitting your opponent, and you can't just simply grapple. Okay? So I would say that that's something that Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu really has over Judo, is the fact that it doesn't really acknowledge weight classes, and they have a healthy element of striking. Which brings me over to Judo. What I think Judo has over Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is two things. I think its emphasis on the takedown, of having a solid, devastating takedown, and I also think the energy, this is important, the energy of Judo is far more realistic for self-defense. So first I'll talk about the takedown. So the takedown when you're studying Jiu-Jitsu is usually limited to fairly simple throws, which is fine because simple throws are good. So they'll teach like a kosotogari where you hook the outside leg, or an ogoshi where you throw somebody over your hip. So like an outside hook or a hip toss. And so you'll learn those real basic throws that are designed to have you and your opponent go to the ground together. Whereas in judo, if you were to perform an ogoshi, you are not going to go to the ground with them. At least that's not your goal. Is you want to hit that thing so damn hard that their feet go flying through the air and they go whack, smack down on the pavement, and you're left standing. Now, if you've ever thrown a shoulder toss or a hip toss, or something like a taiotoshi or something, if you've ever done a judo throw properly, you know those people's bodies whip around. Flap, you have to train on the mat, right? You have to have a mat to fall on because they hit so damn hard. And I think having the ability to have someone grab you and you smash them down into the ground, I think that's incredibly potent, and that's a fight ender. I know, in particular, I've used ogoshi, the hip toss, to end a fight. That it was when I was younger, and we were. It was a challenge match that was at an arcade. Basically, good old fashioned. Your kung fu's not as good as my kung fu sort of thing. And so we slapped hands, and I bridged the gap, and I hit a hip toss. And when I landed that hip toss, he was done. He'd never really been thrown like that. So that was all it took. Not that I want to glorify that kind of thing, but what I'm saying is that, like, the throw itself, having these incredibly powerful, devastating throws of judo is quite potent. But then I also mentioned that the other thing judo has over jiu-jitsu is its energy. That when you study Brazilian jiu-jitsu, there's a lot of emphasis on kind of minimizing the amount of muscle that you use, on keeping it playful, and oftentimes kind of rolling in a very slow and respectful way, which I think is excellent. It's good for training. So in my school, we will roll that way. But if you watch a fight between two people, particularly a fight that has a lot of grappling, watch it. Go online and watch, go to World Star Hip Hop or whatever, and watch two people. And they're yanking on each other, and they're pulling on each other, and they're holding each other, and they're hitting like this, right? That there is a lot of struggle going on there. And when you watch two jiu-jitsu people, Brazilian jiu-jitsu people play, they slap hands, and then they kind of, not always, but oftentimes they kind of agree to grab each other. And they agree to go to the ground. Whereas judo, neither of them want to go to the ground, so they're yanking on each other and they're pulling on each other. And so in many ways, the study of judo, even as a sport, will help you get the energy of a street fight better than jiu-jitsu will. So they both have their points. So with Brazilian jiu-jitsu, right, they don't have weight classes, and that's good because the street doesn't have weight classes. And they have an understanding of punch protection. So that's crucial for self-defense. But in judo, they have the takedown, and they have the energy of a street fight. So by my little chart, they're equal. They're both good. So I think that if you are looking for self-defense, I think Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, old school Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and Judo are both really good arts. I definitely would say sports Jiu-Jitsu is inferior to sports Judo as far as self-defense is concerned. But the nice thing is at the School of Self-Defense, you don't have to choose because we have our JKD grappling class as well as CDS. And both the JKD grappling class and CDF both incorporate elements of Judo and Jiu-Jitsu, as well as we offer ranking in Judo through our private lessons. So if you're interested in studying grappling for self-defense, we have that at the School of Self-Defense. And if you live in the Indianapolis area and you want to come train with us, all the information to do so is in the description box down below. Also, if you are living at a distance and you'd still like to train with us, we have options to train with us via our Patreon, so check that out as well. We have a Facebook and a Twitter and an Instagram. You guys know the whole deal. Just be sure to subscribe and share us with your friends and family. So until next time, everybody, I'm Michael Valenti with the School of Self-Defense. Fight on.